A strange case. One of the strangest cases of disappearance in the 21st century is a group of tourists who decide to enter the Great Pyramid. But they did not come out of the pyramid. An ancient pharaonic idol kidnapped 12 tourists in the pyramid. Does the Great Pyramid have a secret room? No one has been able to discover it yet, and I wonder why everyone is looking for this room. What is inside this room? The story of the story came from a secret file from Russian intelligence. A story that if you heard it, you would think that it is a children's story, but in fact it was mentioned in international newspapers. I made a whole documentary about it. A story that confirms that between reality and imagination in the events of its illogical interpretations. With you, Cleopatra channel, please subscribe and activate the bell. In the year 1985, specifically on April 23rd, a group of 12 Russian tourists visited the pyramids area. The entire tour bus was last seen at the Cairo Hilton. And then they decided to visit the pyramids area. Indeed, they arrived at the Haram area, with the evidence of tickets, surveillance cameras, and the bus that reached them. As soon as they entered the pyramid, all their news was cut off. This is the last information you can know about it. After a while, their families were informed of their disappearance, and the police opened an investigation and started collecting information to know where they had disappeared, and that the young people's family decided to confess something that could help the investigators in the case. The answer was that the young men were coming to visit the area, the pyramids, to perform certain rituals, not for tourism, and that they belonged to a group of pagans called the Foers, and they worshipped an ancient Egyptian god named Osiris. And if they thought or imagined that I had their clothes for the pyramid on the night of the 23rd of the year, they would be able to perform certain rituals, so that Atheros would come back to life again. After this ritual the tourists have been disappeared to this time. And by searching the police in the Haram area, the police were able to find the only evidence of the presence of tourists, which is the evidence is a camera that filmed everything that happened with them, from the time they were on the bus to the moment of their disappearance, so the camera started recording random moments of the young men while they were on the bus. And he continues filming with them until they go down to the pyramids area. And the first time the young men saw a pyramid, they were frightened and fixed it with a camera, and they began to descend on their necks in the position of prayer and began to get up and down, getting up and down, repeatedly while reciting incantations in a strange way in a strange language, and suddenly it got messed up and the sky began to shine with a white light. The camera hit the ground, and this was the last thing the camera captured. Until today, no one knows what happened with the tourists. These investigations stopped, and the Russian and Egyptian governments were strange. Why were the young men so sure, she wondered, doing the ritual would bring Osiris back to life? In order to know the answer to these questions, we go back 14 years to fully understand the story. At the time of the Cold War between America and the Soviet Union. Specifically, in 1961, each country was racing to see who would come up with more inventions. Who is dominant and who is stronger. Although the Soviet Union was far superior, the intelligence services were looking for ways to develop themselves more and more. And because they believed that ancient civilizations were more developed than this time, they decided to look for the best civilization that existed throughout the ages. And they decided to search it for a while, they might find something new. The goal is to use the techniques of this civilization. The goal is to use the techniques of this civilization in military matters and advanced weapons. Indeed, the ancient Egyptian civilization was chosen. In particular, the knowledge room is a room of secrets that is located inside the Great Pyramid, but no one knows its location. All that I remember about it is that it contains all the wisdom and knowledge of the gods, and there is also everything that the Egyptians have been able to reach throughout the ages. That is why the Soviet Union, in cooperation with President Gamal Abdel Nasser, began studying the pyramids area. With an Egyptian mission led by Sami Sharaf. The covert operation was known as Project ISIS. And although they looked around well, they did not find anything. Until you repeat it, they stopped searching. But one day two Bedouins came upon a tomb they had discovered at Giza. And that the cemetery there is something very strange. So the search returned again to work, and the Russian expedition began to discover the cemetery. And here was the shock. A room with 5 chests. And the price of samples for writing in geography. But the most important thing in the tomb is the old coffin they found. And on the door of the room is written a text saying that it is dedicated to the return of the winged one. Who is the one with wings? And how is it returned? But the answer was inside the cemetery. When the Russian soldiers entered the cemetery, they found an ancient Egyptian coffin. And when it was opened, they found the mummy inside it, completely unnatural, more than 2 meters long. He called the tallest pharaohs at this time. When the coffin was opened, white gas and a very strange smell spread. In the documentary film that was recorded on the ISIS project, the counselor says that the soldiers felt a strange feeling that something did not want them to continue their search in the cemetery. An unnatural negative energy ascended from the place, and strange that after examining a sample of the mummy, it was found that it is more than 12,000 years old, dating back approximately to the year 10,000 BC. And I sent real convinced scientists that this is the real time to build the Egyptian pyramids. After that, the mummy was taken with them. So far, no one knows what happened with it, and no one even knows the location of the cemetery that was discovered in Giza. This mummy in Egypt was called the visitor's mummy. Convinced that the mummy was not the mummy of a human being, but rather the mummy of a person who came from an alien visit. And that in an old story that talks about the presence of visits from space to the pharaonic gods of Egypt to teach them all sciences and a second walk except for one person, who is Osiris. And he had a room to move from our world to their world. And people are fully convinced that this mummy, alien and not human mummy, this object was often followed in ancient times. Says Osiris himself. And I think you are with me that the tourists used to worship their Osiris temple. And he went to the pyramid area to retrieve their idol, Osiris. What happened and the tourists disappeared. Is this the first strange story to happen in the pyramids? Of course, in 2011 a YouTube channel appeared with only one video. It says next to it that I am the owner of the video and that if the government does not contact me and pay $5 million, I will publish the rest of the video. And the video is a video camera installed on a small cart. The camera is moved remotely, as someone moves the camera inside a tunnel in the pyramid, and the camera appears. Until you catch a solid light from the tunnel. The video got high views, but despite that, the owner of the video was not contacted, and the week ended. The rest of the video was downloaded, and the young man wrote, "I don't know what is in the video, and no one sends me messages or asks me, so I downloaded the video." The video was completed at the moment when the light appeared in half of the tunnel. A very tall, strange, mysterious creature resembling the ancient Egyptians appeared. A non-human being, and after that the filming was cut off, and after 3 days the video was erased and the person disappeared. Also, there are some kings who were looking for the room of knowledge, such as the Caliph al-Ma'mun. Although he did not affect it, he said that the pyramid hides a record of the past and the present. By the way, the opening made by the Caliph al-Ma'mun in the pyramid is the one through which we can enter the Great Pyramid. Until now, its name is the al-Ma'mun opening. But your opinion about the story is that this is a fictional story, that there are no aliens, and that the great Egyptians are the ones who built the pyramids.